Hey, gang. Welcome to the INSIDEWAG Nutrition Podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Chris, and today's topic is going to be on how to create your own support system to achieve your fitness and or nutrition-related goals.
Yeah, this is a topic that we actually get asked about fairly often as coaches, but it's also something that maybe we as coaches take for granted because we've been tracking, we've been in the health and wellness space for a long time, and it's something that we feel a lot of people could get value out of. So we definitely something we wanted to chat about today. And Chris, what's interesting also is that we have some different perspectives here, and I think that you'll hear it as the episode goes on. But really wanted to kick it over to Chris right away because if you listen to Chris's episode, first of all, he's got an incredible story, and it's really inspirational and motivational. And he's going to take us a little bit deeper into how he was so successful in his weight loss journey and his overall health and wellness goals. So Chris, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. So the number one thing that was the real catalyst for my veering off the path that I was on to creating long-lasting change, not only to reach my goals, but to maintain them on the other side, was I admitted I needed help. And I hired a coach at WAG. And this was after a series of trying what most people listening can relate to is the cycle of, start and stops, jumping from one fad diet to the next, joining some group or community that was doing something particular. So I followed along. And, while I had nominal success with some of those things, none of it actually got me to where I wanted to be. So the number one thing was I got help and I hired a coach from WAG, from Working Against Gravity. And so what that did was help me realize the importance of my goals and how I was ready to actually achieve them for the first time in my life and get to a point that I had never allowed myself to get. So I had to kind of go into this with but literally had to go into this with a different mindset and be ready to be open to learning anything necessary, even if that meant challenging my existing and strongly held beliefs to let some of those things go, to try something that my coach was recommending as an outside, perspective and unbiased perspective. Well, I guess biased in the way that they want to see you achieve progress, but unbiased in the sense that they're not tied to the same things that you believe in, right?
Right.
So the way that I created my support system is I spoke my goals out to the world, to my friends and my family. I was straight up with my friends that I joined a coaching program, and they had, been through me with my previous experience of trying other things. Like, oh, guys, I'm doing CrossFit and I'm doing paleo now. And they're like, oh, cool story, Chris. And it's like, and so, they kind of heard these things before, but this time around, it was definitely different because I wanted to push further and raise the bar higher. And this was the way I was going to do it, I felt like. So I was very committed to that. And so speaking my goals, that I wanted to lose weight, that I wanted to get stronger, that I wanted to be a more capable human being in general, and that I was just generally curious about what I could do, was the pivot point for getting people on my team and actually having a support system. Because as we all know, we already have enough working against us in all of this stuff. The last thing you want is your closest inner circle to be oppositions of your growth, right? Or roadblocks to your growth. Like, generally, you want to be choosing people that are there to make you the best person you possibly can be, because that is mutually beneficial for all. So, from there, and then, I provided insight to my friends and family into why it was important for me and what I was doing to enact that change. So it was the why. It was to feel healthier, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was going to say, that was going to be my next question is, how did that process go? Because it's like you can say, like, I spoke it out into the world and I shared it with everyone, but it's like that step alone can be intimidating to people. Like, people might know it's like, I need this, I need to do this for myself and I need for my health, if you have a lifting goal or something like that. But the how, it's kind of like dieting in general. You know what you should do, but you're not sure how to do it. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, keep going with that thought, please.
Cool. Yeah, no, good point. And so, providing the insight into why I was doing it was just the fact that, I had done a series of start and stops and jumping from fad diet to fad diet. And I was sick of that because I had not found something that actually worked, let alone was sustainable, that I can imagine myself doing 5 years from now. And that was pretty quickly understood because most people could relate to that, you know? And so
Yeah, of
that was kind of
course.
like the buy-in from my friends in a way to be like, yeah, man, that makes perfect sense. And so, you know, it was to be stronger. It was to be a better cyclist, to be a better outdoorsman, hiker, backpacker, camper, like all these things that I enjoy doing. You know, even the simplest things of being able to give my friends a solid, real, genuine hug. You know, like
Wow.
just the little things. I know it sounds
Yeah.
silly, but to me, I
No,
was
no,
like,
no.
that's what I wanted, man. You know, and so, and to like have the energy to play with my dogs and do all these things. And so, and then the what was, I was telling them that, like, you know, I had committed to going to CrossFit 4 to 5 times a week. I committed to starting to track my calories and my macros and gain a better understanding of what I was putting in my body and how I was fueling my body to better, indicate to myself in a way that I had not done in the past how my nutrition choices were aligning with my particular goals and outcomes with weightlifting, losing body fat, becoming a more formidable athlete at the time, things like that, you know?
Yeah.
So, and in that, I asked for accountability when I set a particular goal to help sticking to my guns, whether it was like something as simple as like, hey, we're going to a concert tonight. Like, my plan is to have 2 alcoholic beverages, you know, and that's one on my cap. And so I would speak that to my friends so they were aware, because if one of them had the nerve to encourage me to do something I said I didn't want to do, they weren't on my team anymore, you know? And so
Yeah.
it kind of helped you identify the outliers and then the people who were actually truly, you know, there to support me. And for the most part, it was successful. I didn't have much pushback.
Yeah.
But I've also curated a pretty spectacular group of friends.
Yeah.
And I'm
Sure.
very lucky in that. I'm a very lucky and grateful person for that. And so, and I knew that all along. So I knew for me particularly, it wasn't going to be that big of a challenge to do
Yeah.
this because I already
Yeah.
had the support, right? So that helped me, you know, align what I said I wanted to do with what I actually did. And in more instances than not, I was successful. And what that did was foster a situation and a change in my mindset that was like, oh, you're more than capable of doing this. You just have to challenge yourself to see what that's like,
Yeah.
measure the outcome, the feeling, process that feedback, and say, yeah, that's worth doing, instead of the opposite effect of maybe drinking too much, maybe consuming too many calories, feeling like crap the next day, missing my next day's workout, all those things that have like a connective tissue or thread, if you will. So,
Yeah.
and then finally, the big thing I think we all do too, or some are comfortable with and some are deathly afraid of. But for me, it was posting about my progress on social media. Was another layer of holding me accountable to doing what I said I wanted to achieve, sharing my journey with others,
Yeah.
and getting feedback, you know, whether it's praise or like, man, keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Those little things meant a lot. Like I could be my own cheerleader pretty good, but like it meant a lot when others would make comment on like, man, your face looks different. Your, you know, look at the development of your muscles here and there, and just kind of pinpointing things like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm seeing those things too. I'm glad you are as well. Or maybe I didn't see something and they saw something I didn't.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that I think, again, going back to like coaching, it's like when you have that objective eye, or you know, you see yourself every day, so it's hard to recognize some of these changes. But when someone else sees it and they're like, "Yeah, Chris, man, looking good. Like
Yeah,
you're doing some work." It's like it's very. I mean, there's no more potent uh, piece of motivation that you could get.
yeah.
When you're
Confirmation.
confirmation, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
as you're going through this like transformation, this journey. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, absolutely right, man. And so it's kind of conclude that my piece of this is like essentially like this is how I created my support system, and now this is what it did for me. Ultimately, so what this did for me was it created awareness of what was important to me, to my inner circle, so we were all on the same page. It helped me align my actions with my goals in these social situations, and what that did was strengthen the discipline that I was creating with myself, or you know, keeping integrity with myself. Right.
Yeah.
It allowed others to be aware of what I was working on, so that they could be pillars of support to further ensure my success and show me what's possible, as well as open the door to learn of their goals too. Because when you speak your goals out, people are like, oh yeah, I'm trying to actually eat more whole foods or eat out less. And it'd be an opportunity to provide support to one another, like, hey, good job, that's great, like, how can I help you, how can I support you, you know? And then I got the same feedback from other people, like, how can I support you, like, what do you need from me, you know? So, and sometimes it was like nothing at the moment, but I'll let you know, and that's perfectly fine too. So I had a support system to lean on for advice, just general support or alternative perspectives and insight, and people to celebrate my successes with. So I wasn't alone in this as well. I wasn't alone because I had my coach, but it's nice to have more. And as I said before, I got my family and my friends and even strangers, or what do you call acquaintances in my social media circle, on my team.
For sure.
And, give me insights on what was for dinner, restaurant options, that would work for me. So like if we're getting together as friends, we'd be like, hey man, this is what we're making, just want to give you a heads up on that. Or like, these are the 2 restaurants we're considering. Would one be a better option for you? And sometimes they'd be like, oh, you don't have to cater to me. Thank you though. I want to be challenged to make the best of that situation, because I also need to curate those skill sets with intuitive eating, mindful eating, those things too, right? Yeah. Or then there might be some times where I'm like, I'm really on a roll right now. If we could choose this restaurant, because I know I could get XYZ here, whereas this one would be worth the challenge, but it's not quite what I'm needing right now. And people were perfectly happy with that. Like I incredibly reduced the resistance.
Sure.
In those situations.
That's something that I feel like a lot of people get hung up on, and it's a fear that really never comes to fruition, in my experience, anyways. And actually, a lot of people that I work with is they're terrified of being that person that says like, "Oh, how about we go to this place instead of this place?" And then people are like, "Well, why?" And you say, "Well, I'm really working hard right now, and I'm trying to do this thing," and I find it hard to believe that anyone would run into a situation where someone would actually get mad at someone else for trying to better themselves. And I know that it happens. I've heard stories and I know that it happens, but I think that's like, those are those moments, like you kind of just hit on it a little bit, but those are those moments where you have to, respectfully stand up for yourself and say, hey, like, I've been working at this and like things are going really well. Like, we can go here and it's going to be totally fine, and getting comfortable with that level of confidence with yourself is something that I think a lot of people either struggle with from time to time, but when they crack that code, they're like, oh, I got this,
it's like different now.
Yeah, it's different for sure.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I think anyone wants to be is a nuisance or a burden, in general, you'd hope.
Absolutely.
Certainly not the people I want to keep around me. But again, that's taken some time to curate and kind of kick some people out where they belong, if you will. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of everyone's journey, and just growing up and maturing, things change, your priorities change, the people you care to have around you. It becomes more about quality than it will ever be about quantity,
Yeah.
And finally, and the biggest thing that I think it did, and to me, which was valuable, which was great that I was profiting, benefiting from it, whatever you want to say, it inspired others to pay attention to their own habits and behaviors. And
yes,
as little as it can be, just to hear people that have like watching my journey over 6 years to close to a decade now or whatever, who have just been like, man, just seeing you do that, it made me want to get into the gym. It made me want to do this or change these little things, whether it was small steps or incredibly big leaps and bounds. They're all of equal value and importance to me, and I cherish those moments, because it was like, well, if I wasn't doing those things, I may not have inspired those other people. And not that that was my end goal, but damn, it feels good to know that, right? That like me handling my shit helped other people handle theirs. I mean, what's not to like about that?
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my journey. That was the way I kind of laid down the law, if you will, with my friends, and just spoke my honesty and vulnerability to the world. And boy, did I receive,
That's cool. That's a nice way to wrap it up. That's cool. I did want to go back to the resistance part of it just for a second. Did you ever receive resistance from anyone? Like, can you think of a time where someone was either gave you a hard time for what you were doing, or made some sort of like comment where you just kind of had to like look and be like, dude, really?
Yeah.
Like, anything?
I wish I had. I mean, at least nothing's coming to mind at the point.
That's good. That's good, man.
I know. I mean, there were some points with my best friend Jared. He would just definitely give me little digs, but they were more like loving digs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like oh, whatever,
brotherly
Mr.
love.
Muscles.
Yeah.
Like the tough love and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, clean and jerk guy. Just like all that stuff. And so, like, it was fun. And
sure.
And obviously, that laid the tendrils down to him exploring his own health and fitness, and
Yeah.
getting together a little garage situation and stuff like that. And so, no, honestly, nothing resistance. I think the resistance, honestly, and I don't mean for this to be some profound thing really, but it just kind of came to mind, was the biggest resistance I felt was my own.
Mm.
And it wasn't from other people. Other people were actually the easy part. It was me.
Wow.
It was me getting over my own nonsense and my own obstacles and my self-limiting beliefs, that were the biggest climbing of the ladder, if you will, to gain a different perspective, for sure. So, but it was the love and support and care of my friends and my circle and my family, that really was an investment in myself to let me know that, hey, like, the resistance that you're feeling is natural. It's a part of the process. You've been here before. This is now just another level of a challenge that you are becoming more equipped to meet head on every single day you show up.
Love that. Yeah.
And it led to beautiful things for me and others around me. Like, even my mom lost 50 pounds in like a year and a half.
Holy smokes.
And like,
Just because of seeing you. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Or like
we had a conversation.
you were working through. Yeah.
Yeah, like my mom came out one year for like a short little visit over July. We went for a hike up to one of my favorite spots, Lake Isabel. We just had a good conversation about life, and her marriage was kind of on the rocks and ending, and she was finding the courage to like end that relationship. And it was similar to my journey of ending like a 9-year relationship when I was going through all this change and stuff and the hardships involved. And she was telling me, she's like, been tracking my food for the 4 days a week that I work, but on the 3 days I don't, I haven't been tracking. And I'm like, okay, well, what if you were to track those other 3 days? And she's like, I can do that. That's literally all I said. And my mom went back home to Maine. She started tracking on her days off. And next thing you know, a year goes by and she's down 50 pounds. She was like, I feel stalled, a little plateaued. I'm like, well, how about this little trick? She did that, and that's it. And I remember joyfully posting about my mom's progress in the old WAG Facebook group. Like, hey, my mom's not on WAG. She's not on the program.
That's awesome.
But by proxy, I am, and I'm a coach. Look what this badass is doing.
That's awesome.
And
very
it was
cool.
Incredible. Yeah. So incredible. And she's maintained that weight, and she's happy as can be at like, what, my mom's in her she's 60 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's that ripple effect like you were talking about.
Ripple effect. Yeah. And God,
awesome,
that touched me like nothing else.
I'm sure.
So, I'm so proud of her. Yeah.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Shout out to Chris's mom.
Hell yeah,
Chris's
Mom. Shout out to Sue. What's up, Sue?
Yeah. Very cool. That's great, dude.
Yeah.
That's great.
So how about you, Josh? Like, I know you experienced another place and position in life and career when you jumped into this process, which is vastly different than my own. And I think that's going to be very valuable for our listeners to know that, like, I might have had it a bit easier while still having resistance and obstacles. You had a whole different scenario. So we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Thanks. It was definitely different. Boy, where to begin, kind of. When I remember the day that I got the email that said that the wait list is open for WAG, like, because I was out.
Waitlist days.
Yeah, the wait list days. Yeah. But I remember getting that email, and I was actually out. I was out in the ocean. Like, I was out about 250 miles due south of where were we? New Orleans. So right in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And I got that email, and I ran inside to use the phone and call my wife and say, we should do this right now. And so we did. But as I got started, so I don't know how many sailors or ocean-going folks we have out there, or people that have worked in those kind of environments. But you generally deal with a lot of callous people. Not everyone, but there's a lot of confrontational personalities and people kind of walking around with their chests out, things like that. So when a guy starts measuring his food and using coffee cups to measure his oatmeal every morning and and ask the cooks, if there's going to be a salad for lunch and things like that, you get met with a lot of resistance. And I was met with a ton of resistance, like nonstop, just like badgering and dare I say bullying. I mean, we're grown men, so it's like, So but it's the same thing, it's just so new and so weird to some of these folks that they just don't understand it, and that's where it comes from, And even as I was describing it and trying to help people understand, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. At the time, I was lifting, I was powerlifting, and I was kind of in like ramping up into a competition mode, right? Like I was
Were you
just
able to work out on the ship?
yeah, we had a
You
good
guys had a gym?
yeah, we had a gym on the ship. I could talk about that in a minute. That's
Sweet.
that's a pretty cool story. But yeah, I was getting into the competitive space of powerlifting, so diet and nutrition was very, very important to me. And I actually had a coach that was a powerlifter, and I was like, yeah, I got this guy. I'm going to do exactly what he tells me to do. And now, granted, being out on the ship, I didn't have too many resources, so I had to kind of like figure things out, which is why I was talking about the coffee cups. Like I would take oatmeal and pour it into a coffee cup, and the little to-go coffee cups were 12 ounces. So I knew that I was getting like 12 ounces of oatmeal, and I would eat 2 of those a day, and I would just do my best while I was out there. But again, this like people were just like, what are you doing and why? And so I had to describe it to them all the time, and it was met with a ton of resistance.
It's like you were bringing this foreign weirdness onto the ship.
Yeah. Just no one had ever thought about it or done it or, really anything like that. So as time went, though, I started to see results, and my energy was better. I was sleeping better, which when you're out on a ship for 30 to 35 days at a time, like you have to be able to work hard, you have to get your workouts in, you have to sleep and get up and do it all over again for, 35 days straight. It can be a pretty intense environment. So all of a sudden, everything started to improve. Like my energy got better. I was doing my work like quicker, and I was just getting things done, and, all these things. So all of a sudden, the naysayers start asking, hey, what is that you're, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? Their tune changed real quick. And so then I became,
happens.
yeah, right. Yeah. So then I became like this guy that was helping people out, like with their nutrition, and try to like point them in the right direction and things like that. And then we had a gym on the boat, which was cool because it was a brand new ship that we were on, and we were able to actually design and order what we wanted. So there was like a rig power rack. A rogue power rack, like in this ship. So I was able to train, as long as the boat wasn't rocking too much, which was a very real thing. Like some days you couldn't squat because it was just like rolling back and forth too much.
I was going to say, half the time in CrossFit classes, you're chasing the barbell as it is, like on a
Yeah.
ship.
Yeah.
Was that just chaotic?
Yeah, not a whole lot of CrossFit going on, but
Yeah.
I mean, in the traditional sense.
Weightlifting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but like powerlifting and stuff, bench, squat, deadlift, like, excuse me. Yeah, you can definitely do that stuff. But anyways, all of a sudden I started to become like this, like, this person of authority that kind of knew what they were doing, and it felt really good. Similar to your situation, you kind of went on this journey on your own for your own reasons, and you brought people along. But as soon as people started seeing your results, they're like, "Hey, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that stuff?"
Hey,
And-
sorry for making fun of you there, but what?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and but of course, like when someone, I mean, I didn't even think twice, about letting people know like how to start taking more ownership and control over their own nutrition and health. As I got into it further, as if they called me names the week before, it's like I didn't care about that.
And then it became,
I was just,
I'm the captain now.
yeah, I'm the captain now. Oh my gosh, yeah. For the record, no pirate experiences. So I'm happy to say that. But anyways, that was like my initial introduction into it. Living in two worlds, like the people in the world that you live in when you're working offshore and working on a ship, compared to the people that you live with at home, is night and day. It's drastically different. Because I come home and I'm at the CrossFit gym and I'm coaching, and I'm, my wife was, wife is a WAG coach, but she had just joined WAG at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it was like, you're in good company at home. Everyone's like, oh, awesome, cool. Like, and it was like no big deal.
And how long were your stretches back at home off sea?
Yeah, they're about 30 days. So
Okay.
it was like 30-30.
On and off. Okay.
Yeah, 4 to 5 weeks on
So
at a
you
time, four
did
to five
some
weeks.
bouncing back and forth between essentially different routines and structures based
Yeah,
on where your
yeah,
environment was. Yeah.
yeah. And part of that, I mean, I'm really thankful for that because what I was able to do was when I got home, I was able to be very, very strict about what I ate, and I was also like maybe unintentionally making like mental notes. I'm like looking at my plate and I'm like, okay, this is this is what 8 ounces of chicken looks like. This is what this whole baked sweet potato, the size of my hand, is going to give me 55 grams of carbs. So when I go back out on the ship and I can't weigh my food and I can't be as precise, I know that I'm like, this is going to be pretty close,
Yeah.
and I can kind of fill in the gaps that way. So it was a nice way to kind of learn intuitive eating by switching back and forth.
It's like the off-ship precision of having your food scale and normalcy
Yeah,
at home and an environment provided the setup for basically deploying those skills without tools,
yeah,
right, on the
yeah,
ship. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And again, at the time, I don't know. I mean, I kind of knew that that was going to help, but it didn't really occur to me until after I decided to ultimately leave that career, how much I was appreciative of that, because it was almost like the mindful and intuitive eating was built into the routine, or the habits and things. So I didn't have a lot of trouble making those transitions in and out, which can be troubling for some folks.
Yeah.
But I'm sensitive to that, and I can help people understand. It's like, hey, this is possible, and the benefit that you have is if you do track. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. If you do track and you are fairly regimented and strict about it, the knowledge that you gain from that just carries over for the rest of the time. Like, you're going to be able to make healthy plates, and you're going to be able to navigate your own nutrition even when you're not tracking or not super focused on a particular goal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So again, yeah, my experience was definitely a little bit different, and I did that for quite a while before I ended up becoming a full-time working against gravity coach. But as far as like family and friends outside of the CrossFit gym, like, granted, that makes up a majority of my circle, but friends and family like outside of the gym really like didn't give me a hard time at all. I remember a few Thanksgivings where we brought our own food, and we brought our food scales, and we just like dropped things on, and we didn't make a big show of it. Like, we were still hanging out and still talking and laughing and having fun with the family, but it was like for 3 minutes we got food scale out, and it was like dropping turkey and sweet potato casserole and things on that, and before you knew it, it was gone and away, and we felt good about what we were doing. Family and friends like didn't even really notice.
Took the tiniest effort
Yeah,
to create an entirely different outcome.
yeah, exactly. That's a great that's a
How about
great
that?
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it wasn't a big deal really, and again, going back to what you were talking about, sharing that with your friends and family as well. I think people just get really concerned that they're going to be like ostracized or get made fun of, and I mean, again, I'm sensitive to the fact that people that might happen to some folks, but at that point, you have to think about like who you're hanging out with.
Right. And
There
there's
were,
worse things to be made fun of.
yeah,
Right?
for sure. And it's like, if someone's gonna give you a hard time for like trying to eat healthy and better yourself, that's more about them than you.
100%.
That's something that, yeah, it's about them. And what I find to be true is that when someone sees you doing something healthy that's going to benefit you or your family, and they're not doing that thing, they have this reaction like that. They'll try to bring you down, in some way, and it could be this drastic thing where the discussion or it gets into an argument like very, very quickly, or it could be just these little like nitpicky things, and it's like, yo, we can't have that, and that's when we kind of have to stand up for ourselves. But I hope that no one really has to deal with any of that.
Well, no, and I think that could be a topic for a podcast in and of itself. But yeah, seeing others succeed and do these things like significantly magnifies what they're not doing for themselves.
Yeah.
Because you are doing the things that they probably wish they could do or had, quote unquote, the motivation to do or the drive to do. And it's
Yeah.
just like, well, it comes down to that. Like, well, if I can do it, you probably more than reasonably can do it as well.
Yeah.
You know? But again, it's their self-limiting beliefs that they're currently possessing, and then deflecting onto you.
Yeah.
Because the opposite is, I think, is people don't want to get left behind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, wow,
totally.
you're excelling. You're on this, like, incremental improvement process, and I'm sitting here just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Taking
Yeah.
it as it goes, complacent, compliant, whatever.
Yeah,
and not challenging yourself, but you are, and some people that scares some people.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, it creates like an uncomfortable thing because you're forced to reflect, at that point. And this goes beyond nutrition too, of course, but I think it's very prevalent like in the nutrition and health space. And maybe that's just because you and I and a lot of the people that we know are in that space, but for some other people it may not be so obvious to them,
Right.
Yeah. I did, real quick, I wanted to read something that a friend of mine wrote on his Instagram account that, it was, I wasn't sure when I was going to read it on this episode, but this is a good spot for it.
Perfect.
A lot of you might know that I'm co-owner of a CrossFit gym here in Michigan, and a friend of mine and a gym member posted this on his Instagram account just a few days ago. His name's Jason, and the dude has gone through some stuff, and that's his story to tell. But he's been through it and really works hard on himself to become just a better human being in all aspects. And he wrote this little thing, and I just wanted to read it real quick because it's very pertinent to what we're talking about, and surrounding yourself with like people that are going to lift you up and help you to achieve these goals that you might have, either in the gym, in the nutrition space, or like whatever else. So he says, "It's taken me years to gain the strength and fortitude necessary to know when someone else, no matter how much you feel for them, cannot bring any real value to your existence, as they are not willing to help themselves. Look at who you interact with daily. Yes, we are all in pain, but do they get up every day determined to not let that pain stop them from loving who they are? And are they willing to do the hard work necessary to heal? I get up almost every day at 5:50 and go to the CrossFit gym and see 30 other people who, despite their pain and discomfort, want to set themselves up for a day of success. I choose these types of people to surround myself with because I know that they too are refusing to let their pain and trauma dictate their existence. And honestly, it feels so good to be a part of that collective mindset. It's infectious. No matter what happens that day, it's already been won in their mind and body because they choose it to be that way." And
Wow.
there's not a lot that I disagree with at all about that statement, because again, Chris, you were talking about it too. It's a choice. Like when you're going for something and you want to share these goals with people and be open about it, like you are choosing to, one, be vulnerable about that because you're purposefully saying, I'm working on myself and I'm trying to be better. And then the people that you're sharing that with, you're confiding in them, and they might have a certain way of reacting to that, but hopefully it's a positive one, and they carry on with you, and that's ultimately what I think what we want people to know is, like, take a look at who you surround yourself with and make sure that there's positive people in your life, because you deserve that, and also they probably deserve you too.
Yeah. Beautifully said, man. And shout out to Jason for allowing you to read that.
Yeah,
and share that
sure.
with our listeners.
Yeah.
And I noticed that was something you shared of his the other day. The surround yourself with those on the same mission as you. I believe
Yeah.
it's a post.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
And
Yep,
I
that's
pulled
it.
up his Instagram and saw that. I'm like, oh, there we go. There's the connection. There's the thread.
There you go.
Yeah, I love that, man. Well,
There you go.
what a perfect way to end this podcast, I think.
Yeah.
We hope you all gain some better understanding of, maybe the small steps or the big steps that you can take to turn things around in your inner circle and get people on your team, or at least maybe just have the courage to share a little more if you're in a position where you feel a little uncomfortable. But remember that what you're doing already is uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
this is just another layer of it, right? And
Yeah.
so be willing to lean into that uncomfortableness. I implore you to be curious as to what you'll discover in this process, not only about yourself, but your friends and your family, and then how you kind of can change those relationships with those people to gain a better understanding and maybe just create the perfect support system that you've needed all along, or maybe you had all along but didn't really realize it, you know?
I love that. Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, and like Chris's journey started out this way, and my journey started out as a similar in a similar fashion. That like we were looking for guidance and we were looking for help to get started with all this, and that's when we found Working Against Gravity. So if you're in that same position and you want to get started, like please check us out at workingagainstgravity.com. You can work with myself or Chris or anyone else that is on the staff, because we got a great staff, and we hope that maybe we can be part of that support system too. So yeah, check us out, and so long, gang. Well, hope you guys have a great week.